You are listening to Craziest HOA Moments. Someone in this neighborhood has been running a quiet scam. Do not close that door, we are handling this now. Karen pointed at a tow notice and screamed that it was authorized under an old decision, and I could not question it. The tow truck sat idling 20 feet away, its engine growling in the humid Syracuse air, while two neighbors whispered while pointing at the tow truck from their driveway. I stood on the curb in front of my car with the notice in my hand, heart hammering, trying to keep my voice steady. The notice said my parking violated Section 4.3 of the Villas at Lakeview Reserve Association rules, effective as of 18 months ago. I had never seen Section 4.3 in my life. Deborah King was the architectural committee chair for the HOA. She lived 3 streets over and ran the association portal like it was her personal kingdom. I am a barber who gets neighborhood intel from customers, so I had heard the rumors about Deborah for months. She loved to enforce. She loved the power, and she loved to tell people that following the rules was her calling. You think this is petty, I think this is my purpose. She said it twice in the first 30 seconds. The tow driver stepped out of the cab, clipboard in hand, ready to hook my car. I asked Deborah to show me the rule. She pulled out her phone, scrolled for 3 seconds, and turned the screen toward me. The page was a screenshot of a PDF. The header read Section 4.3. The text underneath said all vehicles must be parked in designated spaces as determined by the committee. I asked her which space was mine. She said the committee had updated the designations last year, and I was in violation because my car was in a formerly valid spot that was now reassigned. I asked why I had never been notified. She said the notice went out in the monthly newsletter. I said I never got it. She said that was my problem, not hers. The tow driver hooked the chain under my front bumper. I asked for proof of the notice. Deborah smirked and said, I do not need proof, I have paperwork and vibes. The chain rattled. My stomach dropped. I was paying off debt and one bogus collection notice could ruin months of progress. I told the driver to stop. He looked at Deborah. She nodded. He kept working. I pulled out my phone and opened the HOA portal. I scrolled to the rules section. Section 4.3 was not there. I showed Deborah. She waved me off and said the portal was outdated and the printed handbook was the official version. I said I never got a printed handbook. She said everyone got one at closing. I said I closed 16 months ago and the only thing I got was a 2-page welcome letter. Deborah rolled her eyes and said if I wanted to dispute it, I could file a formal appeal and wait 6 weeks for a hearing. The tow truck engine revved. My car started to lift. I asked the driver if he had a copy of the authorization. He said the HOA sent it. I asked to see it. He handed me a work order. The date on the work order was today. The violation date was listed as 6 weeks ago. I asked Deborah how the violation could be 6 weeks old if I had been parking in the same spot every day and no one said anything until now. She said the committee reviewed the block yesterday and flagged it. The story did not match the paperwork. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. I told the driver I was calling my attorney. Deborah laughed and said go ahead, but the tow fee was already accruing. I stepped back and made the call. My attorney picked up on the second ring. I explained the situation in 30 seconds. He said do not let them tow it, get photos of everything and file a records request immediately. I took photos of the notice, the work order, and Deborah filming me with her phone on a gimbal. She told me to stop harassing her. I told her I was documenting a disputed enforcement action. She said that was illegal. I said it was not. The tow driver lowered my car back down and unhooked the chain. He said he was not getting in the middle of this. Deborah shouted that he was under contract and had to complete the job. He shrugged and said he would need clearer authorization. She called someone on speaker. A man answered. She said the resident was refusing to comply and she needed backup. The man said he would send management out. I had 15 minutes before management arrived. I used the time to call a customer who had mentioned Deborah at his last haircut. His name was Marcus, and he was a real estate agent who warns me what liens and disclosures would do. He picked up on the first ring. I told him what was happening. He said, listen, Deborah pulled the same thing on someone 2 years ago. They paid the tow fee and the fine and never fought it. I asked him if he remembered the details. He said the violation was a parking issue just like mine. The resident claimed they never got a notice, and Deborah insisted the enforcement was valid under an old rule. The resident moved out 6 months later. I asked Marcus if he had any paperwork. He said no, but he heard the resident tried to get records and the management company said they lost them. That was the second clue. Management pulled up in a white sedan. A woman stepped out holding a tablet. She introduced herself as the property manager and asked what the issue was. I explained the tow notice, the missing rule, and the discrepancy in the dates. She scrolled through the tablet and said the rule was valid and the notice process was followed. I asked her to show me the rule in the official handbook. She said she did not have a copy with her. I asked when I would have received one. She said at closing. I said I did not. She said that was between me and the title company. Deborah stood off to the side, arms crossed, smirking. I asked the manager if I could file a records request. She said yes, but it would take 10 business days. I asked if that meant the tow was on hold. She said no. I asked why not. She said the violation was already documented, and the enforcement was valid regardless of whether I disputed it. That was when I realized the system was designed to make me pay first and fight later. I told the manager I was not authorizing the tow. She said if I did not move my car within 24 hours, they would tow it anyway and add the fees to my account. I asked her to put that in writing. She said she would email it. Deborah stepped forward and said she wanted me cited for obstruction. The manager looked uncomfortable. I asked what obstruction meant. Deborah said I was interfering with HOA operations. I said I was asking questions. She said that was the same thing. The manager said she would follow up and got back in her car. Deborah stayed. She told me I was making this harder than it needed to be. I told her I wanted to see the rule. She said I already saw it. I said I wanted the official version, not a screenshot. She said the screenshot was the official version. I asked who decided that. She said the board did. I asked when. She said last year. I asked for the meeting minutes. She said they were on the portal. I checked, they were not. That night I filed a formal records request through the portal. I requested all meeting minutes from the past 2 years, all rules updates, all parking designations, and all enforcement actions taken in my section. I also requested a copy of the official handbook. The system confirmed receipt and said I would get a response within 10 business days. I did not sleep. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. The missing rule, the mismatched dates, the lost records from 2 years ago. It felt like a pattern. The next morning I got an email from Deborah. It said my records request was excessive and violated the association's reasonable limits policy. It said I needed to narrow the scope or the request would be denied. I forwarded it to my attorney. He said that was nonsense and told me to reply stating that the request was specific and reasonable under state law. I sent the reply. 2 hours later I got another email. This one was from the management company. It said my account was flagged for non-compliance and I had 48 hours to move my car or face additional penalties. The email included a link to Section 4.3. I clicked it. The page loaded. It was the same screenshot Deborah had shown me. I scrolled to the bottom. The document metadata said it was created 6 weeks ago. That was 3 weeks after I supposedly violated the rule. I called Marcus again. I told him about the metadata. He said that was the smoking gun. I asked him what I should do. He said get a lawyer to subpoena the full document history and force them to produce the original. I said my attorney needs one more document today and the HOA is stalling to run out the clock. Marcus said he knew someone on the board who was not part of Deborah's inner circle. He gave me a name and number. I called immediately. The board member picked up. Her name was Linda. I explained the situation. She said she had heard complaints about Deborah before, but no one ever followed through. I asked if she could help me get the records. She said she could try, but Deborah controlled the portal admin tools and could delete things before anyone saw them. I asked if there was a backup. She said the management company kept copies, but Deborah had a relationship with them and they usually sided with her. I spent the rest of the day digging. I called the tow company directly. I asked for a copy of all work orders they had completed for the villas at Lakeview Reserve Association in the past 2 years. The dispatcher said that was proprietary information. I said I was a resident, and I had a right to know if the HOA was authorizing tows on my property. She put me on hold. 5 minutes later, a supervisor came on. He said they could not release the records without HOA authorization. I asked if the authorization included names and dates. He said yes. I asked if he could confirm whether my car was the first tow in my section. He paused. Then he said no. There had been others. I asked how many. He said he could not say. I thanked him and hung up. That was the third clue. Deborah had done this before. The tow company knew. The management company knew. And the board either did not know or did not care. I went back to the portal and searched for old enforcement notices. The search function was disabled. I tried the archive. It was empty. I tried the meeting minutes section. It only went back 6 months. Everything older was gone. I called Linda again. I asked her if the board had access to older records. She said the management company stored them off-site. I asked if she could request them. She said she could try, but it might take weeks. I did not have weeks. The next morning, Deborah showed up at my door. She did not knock. She rang the bell 6 times in a row and then started pounding. I opened the door. She was holding a clipboard and wearing a cheap badge clipped to her windbreaker. She said she was conducting a surprise inspection stunt where Karen shows up with a clipboard like it is a crime scene. I asked what she was inspecting. She said exterior compliance. I asked if she had given notice. She said the bylaws allowed for unannounced inspections in cases of ongoing violations. I asked what ongoing violations. She pointed at my car. She said it was still parked in the wrong spot, and now I was also in violation for having a trash can visible from the street. I looked. My trash can was sitting next to the garage door. It was pickup day. She said the rule required all trash cans to be stored out of sight except on pickup day. I said it was pickup day. She said the rule specified that cans could only be placed at the curb after 6 in the morning. I checked my phone. It was 6:15. She said I had put the can out at 5:45. I asked how she knew that. She said she drove by. I asked Deborah if she was surveilling my house. She said she was enforcing the rules. I asked if she had photos. She pulled out her phone and showed me a time-stamped image of my trash can sitting by the garage in the dark. The timestamp said 5:47. I asked why she was driving through the neighborhood before 6 in the morning. She said that was none of my business. I told her the inspection was over and asked her to leave. She said she was not done. She started walking around the side of the house. I followed. She pointed at my fence. She said the stain was fading and needed to be refreshed. I said the fence was 2 years old. She said the standard was 3 years between maintenance. I said that meant I had another year. She said the rule was flexible, and the committee could require earlier action if the appearance was declining. I asked who on the committee made that determination. She said she did. I pulled out my phone and started recording. She told me to stop. I said I was documenting the inspection. She stepped closer and held her phone on a gimbal, filming constantly inches from my face. I stepped back. She said I was being hostile. I said I was standing on my own property. She said the HOA had easement rights. I asked her to show me the easement. She said it was in the plat. I said I wanted to see it. She said she did not have it with her. I told her to send it to me. She said she would add it to my file. Then she turned and walked back to the street. She shouted over her shoulder that I had 7 days to address the violations or I would be fined $300. I called my attorney immediately. I told him about the inspection and the new violations. He said it sounded like harassment. I asked what I could do. He said document everything, do not engage, and wait for the records request response. I asked what happened if they denied the request. He said we would file a complaint with the state. I asked how long that would take. He said months. I did not have months. I asked if there was a faster way. He said I could try to get a board member to request the records internally. I told him about Linda. He said that was a good start. I called Linda again. I told her about the inspection and the new violations. She sighed and said Deborah was out of control. I asked if she would request the records. She said she would, but she needed a formal resolution from the board. I asked how long that would take. She said the next board meeting was in 2 weeks. I said that was too late. She said she could try to call an emergency meeting, but she would need another board member to second it. I asked who else was on the board. She gave me 2 names. I called the first one. He did not answer. I called the second one. She picked up. Her name was Janet. I explained the situation. She said she was aware of complaints about Deborah, but she did not want to get involved. I asked why not. She said Deborah had threatened to sue her once for questioning an enforcement decision. I asked if the threat was credible. She said no, but it was exhausting. I thanked her and hung up. I was stuck. The board would not act. The management company would not cooperate, and Deborah was escalating. I went back to the portal and tried one more search. I typed in towing authorizations. The search returned 0 results. I tried parking violations. 0 results. I tried enforcement actions. 0 results. The portal had been scrubbed. I took screenshots of everything. Then I logged out and called the management company directly. I asked to speak to whoever handled records requests. They transferred me 3 times. Finally, a woman picked up. She said she was the compliance officer. I asked about my records request. She said it was still being processed. I asked when I would get a response. She said within 10 business days. I said it had been 5 days. She said they were backed up. I asked if I could pick up the records in person. She said no. I asked why not. She said it was policy. I asked if the policy was written down. She paused. Then she said it was in the employee handbook. I asked for a copy. She said that was internal. I told her I was entitled to the records under state law. She said she understood, but the process had to be followed. I asked what the process was. She said the request had to be reviewed, approved, and then compiled. I asked who reviewed it. She said the board. I said the board met every 2 weeks. She said correct. I said my request was submitted before the last meeting. She said it was not on the agenda. I asked why not. She said Deborah had flagged it as excessive. I asked if Deborah had the authority to do that. She said Deborah was the committee chair. I said that did not answer the question. She said she had to go and hung up. That night, I got another email. It was from Deborah. The subject line said final notice. The body said I had failed to address the violations, and my account was being charged $300. It said if I did not pay within 10 days, the amount would increase to $500 and a lien would be filed against my property. I forwarded it to my attorney. He called me back within an hour. He said the escalation was retaliation and we needed to act fast. I asked what that meant. He said we needed to file a complaint and request an injunction. I asked how much that would cost. He said at least $5,000 to start. I said I did not have that. He said we could try to negotiate a settlement. I asked with who. He said the board. I laughed. He said it was worth a try. If you are enjoying this HOA drama, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories where the paper trail wins. The next morning, I got a call from the tow company. The supervisor said he had reconsidered and he could provide limited information. I asked what that meant. He said he could confirm that there had been 5 tows in my section over the past 18 months, all authorized by Deborah King. I asked if he could send me the work orders. He said no, but he could confirm that the authorizations all cited the same rule. I asked which rule. He said Section 4.3. I asked when it was added to the HOA rules. He said the authorizations all claimed it was effective 18 months ago. I thanked him and hung up. That was the 4th clue. The rule had been backdated. I called Marcus. I told him about the tows and the backdating. He said that was fraud. I asked if he could help me prove it. He said he would ask around. 2 hours later, he called back. He said he found the resident who was towed 2 years ago. Her name was Sarah. She still lived in the area. He gave me her number. I called immediately. Sarah picked up on the second ring. I introduced myself and explained what was happening. She said she remembered it clearly. She said Deborah had shown up with a tow truck and claimed her car was parked illegally. Sarah said she asked to see the rule. Deborah showed her a printout. Sarah said the printout looked official, but she had never seen it before. She paid the tow fee because she could not afford to fight it. I asked if she still had the printout. She said no. I asked if she remembered the date. She said it was March of 2 years ago. I asked if she ever got a copy of the rule in her welcome packet. She said no. I asked if she filed a complaint. She said yes, but the board never responded. That was the fifth clue. Deborah had been running the same scheme for at least 2 years, and the board had ignored complaints. I asked Sarah if she would be willing to talk to my attorney. She said yes. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called my attorney. I told him everything. He said we had enough to file a formal complaint with the state HOA ombudsman and request an emergency hearing. I asked how long that would take. He said 2 to 3 weeks. I said Deborah was threatening a lien in 10 days. He said we needed to move faster. He said he would draft a demand letter to the board and copy the management company. He said the letter would outline the fraud, demand the records, and threaten legal action if they did not comply within 48 hours. I asked if that would work. He said it might scare them into cooperating. The letter went out the next morning. By noon, I had a response. It was from the management company attorney. It said the allegations were false, the enforcement actions were valid, and any further harassment would result in legal action against me. I forwarded it to my attorney. He said that was a standard intimidation tactic. I asked what we should do. He said file the complaint. I said I did not have the records yet. He said we would file based on what we had and request the records as part of the discovery. I asked how long that would take. He said months. I said I needed something faster. That afternoon, Deborah showed up again. This time she had someone with her, a man in a polo shirt holding a camera. She said he was a contractor hired by the HOA to document violations. I asked if she had notified me. She said notification was not required for exterior inspections. I asked what they were inspecting. She said everything. The man started taking photos of my house, my driveway, my fence, and my car. I asked him to stop. He ignored me. Deborah said I was interfering with official HOA business. I said I wanted to see the authorization. She pulled out a printed form. The form had the HOA logo at the top and said inspection authorization. It was dated that morning. It was signed by Deborah King, Architectural Committee Chair. I asked who else signed it. She said no one else needed to. I asked if the board approved it. She said the committee had independent authority. I asked to see that in the bylaws. She said it was implied. The contractor finished taking photos and got in his truck. Deborah handed me a new notice. It said I was in violation of 12 separate rules, including improper parking, improper trash storage, unmaintained fence, unapproved exterior color, missing landscaping, and visible utility equipment. I asked what visible utility equipment meant. She pointed at my air conditioning unit. I said it was part of the house. She said it was not screened. I asked if screening was required. She said yes. I asked where. She said in the architectural guidelines. I asked for a copy. She said it was on the portal. I checked. It was not. She said that was my problem. Then she turned and walked away. She shouted over her shoulder that I had 14 days to address all violations or the fines would be doubled. I called my attorney again. I told him about the new violations and the contractor. He said it was harassment and we needed to document it. I said I already was. He said we needed to escalate. I asked how. He said we needed to involve law enforcement. I asked if that would help. He said it might. I called the non-emergency line. An officer said he would send someone out. 2 hours later, a deputy arrived. I explained the situation. He looked at the notice. He said it was a civil matter. I asked if there was anything he could do. He said I could file a harassment complaint. I asked if that would stop Deborah. He said probably not. I thanked him and he left. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the missing records, the backdated rule, and the scrubbed portal. Every piece pointed to the same thing. Deborah was hiding something. I opened my laptop and started searching. I searched for HOA fraud cases in New York. I found dozens. Most involved board members embezzling money or awarding contracts to friends. A few involved enforcement schemes designed to drive out residents. I kept reading. One case stood out. A board member had created fake violations to justify towing cars, and the tow company had paid a kickback for every tow. The board member was convicted of fraud. The HOA was fined. The residents got refunds. I called the tow company again. I asked the supervisor if there was any financial relationship between the company and the HOA. He hesitated. Then he said the company paid a referral fee for exclusive service rights. I asked how much. He said he could not say. I asked if the fee went to the HOA or to individuals. He said it went to the HOA account. I asked if he had proof. He said the contract was on file. I asked for a copy. He said I would need to request it from the HOA. I thanked him and hung up. That was the sixth clue. There was money involved. I went back to the portal. I logged in and searched for financial reports. The portal had a section for budgets and expenses. I clicked on it. The most recent report was from 6 months ago. I scrolled through it. There was a line item for towing services. The amount was $12,000. I clicked on the detail. It showed 6 transactions, each for $2,000. The dates matched the 5 tows the supervisor had mentioned, plus one more. I took a screenshot. Then I searched for contracts. The portal had a contract section, but it was empty. I tried the meeting minutes again. Still nothing older than 6 months. I called Linda. I told her about the referral fee and the towing expenses. She said she had never seen those numbers. I asked if the board reviewed the financials. She said they did, but Deborah always presented them, and no one asked questions. I asked if Linda could request a full audit. She said she could try, but it would require a board vote. I asked if she thought the other members would support it. She said maybe, if they knew what was happening. I asked her to try. She said she would bring it up at the next meeting. The next morning, I got an email from the management company. It said my records request had been reviewed and partially approved. It said I would receive copies of the meeting minutes from the past 6 months and the current version of the rules. It said the request for older records and enforcement actions was denied as overly broad. I forwarded it to my attorney. He said that was unacceptable and we needed to appeal. I asked how. He said we would file a formal objection with the board and demand full compliance. I asked how long that would take. He said at least another 2 weeks. I said I did not have 2 weeks. He said then we needed to go nuclear. I asked what that meant. He said we needed to file a lawsuit. I could not afford a lawsuit. I called Marcus again. I told him I was stuck. He said he might have another option. He said he knew a reporter who covered HOA issues. I asked if the reporter would be interested. He said maybe, if the story was big enough. I asked what counted as big enough. He said fraud, corruption, or retaliation. I said I had all 3. He gave me the reporter's number. I called. The reporter picked up on the 3rd ring. Her name was Emily. I explained the situation. She said it sounded like a good story. I asked what she needed. She said documents, witnesses, and proof of harm. I said I had documents and witnesses. She asked about proof of harm. I said I was facing fines, a lien, and constant harassment. She said that might work. She asked if I could meet her the next day. I said yes. The next morning I met Emily at a coffee shop near downtown Syracuse. I brought the tabbed binder. Inside was everything I had collected. Screenshots of the portal, photos of the notices, the tow company work order, the email trail with the management company, Sarah's contact information, the financial report. Emily flipped through it. She said it was solid. She asked if I had the missing rule. I said no, but I had proof it did not exist in the resident handbook. She asked if I could get the handbook. I said the management company refused to provide it. She said that was suspicious. She asked if anyone else had a copy. I said I did not know. She said she would look into it. She asked if I was willing to go on record. I said yes. She said she would start working on the story. That afternoon, I got a call from Linda. She said the board had agreed to an emergency meeting to discuss my complaint. I asked when. She said tomorrow night. I asked if Deborah would be there. She said yes. I asked if I could attend. She said residents were allowed to observe but not participate unless invited. I said I would be there. The meeting was held in the clubhouse. I arrived early. The room was set up with a long table at the front and rows of chairs facing it. 5 board members sat at the table. Deborah was in the center. Linda was on the left. The other 3 I did not recognize. About a dozen residents sat in the chairs. I took a seat in the back. The meeting started. The board president called the meeting to order and read the agenda. The first item was my complaint. Linda stood and summarized the issues. She said I had requested records and been denied. She said I had been issued multiple violations without proper notice. She said there were questions about the validity of the enforcement actions. Deborah interrupted. She said the complaint was baseless and I was wasting the board's time. Linda said the board had a duty to investigate. Deborah said the committee had independent authority and did not need board approval. Linda said that was not true. Deborah pulled out a binder and slammed it on the table. Deborah said the binder contained all the documentation proving the enforcement actions were valid. She said I had violated multiple rules and refused to comply. She said I was a problem resident who was trying to intimidate the board. Linda asked to see the binder. Deborah slid it across the table. Linda opened it. She flipped through the pages. She looked up. She said the documents were not dated. Deborah said they did not need to be. Linda said they did. Deborah said the committee followed its own procedures. Linda said the procedures had to comply with the bylaws. Deborah said she wrote the procedures. Linda said that was the problem. The room went quiet. One of the other board members, a man named Tom, spoke up. He said he had not seen any of these documents before. Deborah said that was because the committee reported directly to the board president, not to the full board. Tom said that was not how it worked. Deborah said it was how it had always worked. Tom said he wanted to see the bylaws. Deborah said she did not have them with her. Tom said that was convenient. Deborah stood up. She said if the board did not support her, she would resign. Linda said that was fine. Deborah stared at her. Then she grabbed the binder and walked out. The room erupted. Residents started shouting questions. The board president called for order. Tom said the board needed to suspend all enforcement actions until they could review the procedures. Linda seconded. The motion passed 4-0. Deborah was gone. After the meeting, I waited outside. Linda came out. She said that went better than expected. I asked what happened next. She said the board would request a full audit of the committee's actions. I asked how long that would take. She said at least a month. I asked what happened to my violations. She said they were suspended pending review. I asked about the fines. She said they would be held in abeyance. I thanked her. She said I should thank Emily. I asked why. She said Emily had called her earlier that day and told her she was working on a story. Linda said that gave her the leverage she needed to push for the meeting. I smiled. The next day, I got an email from the management company. It said they were providing the records I had requested. Attached were PDFs of meeting minutes going back 2 years, the full rule book, and a list of enforcement actions. I opened the rule book. Section 4.3 was not in it. I searched for parking. The parking section was 1 page and contained basic rules about blocking driveways and fire lanes, nothing about designated spaces. I took screenshots. Then I opened the enforcement actions list. It showed 12 actions over 2 years. 8 were towing. All 8 were signed by Deborah King. All 8 cited Section 4.3. I forwarded everything to my attorney. He called me within an hour. He said we had them. I called Emily. I told her about the records. She said she was ready to publish. I asked when. She said tomorrow. I asked if she needed anything else. She said she wanted a comment from Deborah. I laughed. She said she would try. The next morning, the story went live. The headline was HOA Chair Accused of Fabricating Rules to Justify Bogus Towing Fees. The article detailed the missing rule, the backdated enforcement actions, and the referral fee arrangement with the tow company. It included interviews with me, Sarah, and Linda. It included a response from the management company saying they were reviewing the matter. It did not include a comment from Deborah. Emily said she had called 6 times and left messages. Deborah never responded. By noon, the story had blown up. Local news picked it up. Residents started flooding the HOA portal with complaints. The management company released a statement saying they were conducting an internal investigation. The board called another emergency meeting. This time, the room was packed. I stood in the back. The board president opened the meeting. He said the board had reviewed the evidence and determined that multiple enforcement actions were invalid. He said the board was suspending Deborah's access to the portal admin tools and removing her from the architectural committee. He said all fines and fees tied to the scheme would be refunded. He said the board was terminating the contract with the tow company and negotiating a settlement that includes refunds and limits on enforcement. The room erupted in applause. After the meeting, Tom pulled me aside. He said the board wanted to apologize. I said I appreciated it. He said they were going to implement new oversight procedures. I asked what that meant. He said all enforcement actions would require board approval. He said the committee would no longer have independent authority. I asked what happened to Deborah. He said she had resigned. I asked if she faced any consequences. He said the board was considering legal action to recover the referral fees. I asked if that would work. He said maybe. I said I wanted to be part of it. He said he would let me know. A week later, I got a check in the mail. It was from the HOA. The amount was $800. The memo line said refund of invalid fees. I deposited it. Then I got a call from Marcus. He said the tow company had contacted Sarah and offered her a refund. I asked how much. He said $2,000. I asked if she took it. He said yes. He said the company was trying to avoid a lawsuit. I said good. The next day I went to the barber shop. A customer sat down and asked if I was the guy from the news. I said yes. He said he lived in a different HOA in Syracuse and he was having the same problem. I asked what problem. He said his board was charging bogus fees and refusing to provide records. I asked if he had documentation. He said some. I told him to get everything he could and file a complaint. I told him to call Emily. He said he would. That afternoon, I got a call from my attorney. He said the state HOA ombudsman was opening an investigation into the villas at Lakeview Reserve Association. I asked what that meant. He said they would review all enforcement actions and financials for the past 5 years. I asked what happened if they found fraud. He said the board could be fined and individuals could face criminal charges. I asked if that included Deborah. He said yes. I asked how long it would take. He said at least a year. I said I could wait. 2 weeks later, Emily published a follow-up story. The headline was, State Investigating Syracuse HOA After Fraud Allegations. The article detailed the ombudsman's investigation and included updates on the refunds. It also revealed that the tow company had paid over $50,000 in referral fees to the HOA over 3 years. The article included a statement from Deborah's attorney saying she denied any wrongdoing. I laughed when I read it. A month later, I got another email from the management company. It said the board had completed its internal audit and identified additional invalid enforcement actions. It said they were issuing refunds to 14 residents. I forwarded it to Sarah. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. That night I met Marcus for a drink. He asked how I was doing. I said better. He asked if it was worth it. I said yes. He asked if I would do it again. I said I hoped I did not have to. He laughed. He said he heard Deborah was moving. I asked where. He said out of state. I said good riddance. He raised his glass. I raised mine. We drank. The next morning I went for a walk around the neighborhood. I passed the clubhouse. The sign out front still said the Villas at Lakeview Reserve Association. I kept walking. I passed Deborah's house. There was a for sale sign in the yard. I smiled. I kept walking. I passed the spot where the tow truck had been parked. It was empty. I kept walking. I got back to my house and sat on the porch. A neighbor walked by and waved. I waved back. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. A week later, I got a call from Linda. She said the board had voted to implement new transparency policies. I asked what that meant. She said all enforcement actions would be posted on the portal within 24 hours. She said all financial reports would be published quarterly. She said residents could request records at any time without board approval. I said that was a good start. She said it was because of me. I said it was because of everyone who spoke up. She said she hoped it would prevent this from happening again. I said I did too. The next day I went to a records pickup scene where a staffer hands me a missing page by mistake and everyone freezes. I had filed a final records request to get copies of everything for my own files. I drove to the management company office. A staffer met me at the counter. She handed me a thick envelope. I opened it and flipped through the pages. Near the back was a document I had not seen before. It was an internal memo from 3 years ago. The subject line said Parking Enforcement Proposal. The memo outlined a plan to increase towing revenue by creating new parking restrictions. It was signed by Deborah King and the previous property manager. The staffer saw me reading it. Her face went white. She said that was not supposed to be in there. I said I appreciated her including it. She said it was a mistake. I said it was evidence. I put it back in the envelope and walked out. I forwarded the memo to my attorney. He called me back immediately. He said it was the smoking gun. I asked what he meant. He said it proved intent. He said the state could use it to bring charges. I asked if Deborah knew. He said she was about to. I asked what happened next. He said we wait for the investigation to conclude. I said I could do that. 2 months later, the state ombudsman released its findings. The report was 30 pages. It detailed multiple violations of state HOA law, including improper enforcement procedures, failure to provide records, and financial mismanagement. It named Deborah King as the primary responsible party. It recommended that the board remove her from all positions and pursue recovery of the referral fees. It recommended that the management company be fined for failing to ensure compliance. It recommended that the tow company be barred from contracting with HOAs in the state. The report was sent to the county attorney for review. A week later, the county attorney announced charges. Deborah was charged with fraud and official misconduct. The management company was fined $50,000. The tow company settled and agreed to refund all fees paid by residents over 3 years. I got another check. This one was for $3,000. I deposited it. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later. My attorney said I might be called as a witness. I said I was ready. He said the case was strong. I asked what the likely outcome was. He said Deborah would probably take a plea. I asked what that meant. He said probation and restitution. I asked if that was enough. He said it was better than nothing. I agreed. 3 months later, Deborah took a plea. She pled guilty to 1 count of fraud. She was sentenced to 2 years probation and ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution to the HOA. She was also barred from serving on any HOA board in the state. The judge said her actions had caused significant harm to residents and violated the trust placed in her. Deborah did not speak. Her attorney said she accepted responsibility. I watched from the gallery. When it was over, I walked out. After the sentencing, I met Emily for lunch. She asked how I felt. I said relieved. She asked if I thought justice was served. I said mostly. She asked what I meant. She said Deborah got off easy, but the system worked. She asked if I would do it again. I said I hoped I did not have to, but yes. She said she was glad. She said stories like mine made a difference. I thanked her. She said she should be thanking me. That night, I went back to the barbershop. A customer asked if I was the guy who took down the HOA. I said I was one of them. He said he read the story. He said he was dealing with the same thing in his neighborhood. I told him to document everything and get a lawyer. I told him not to give up. He said he would not. I finished his haircut and he left. Another customer sat down. He said he heard what happened. He said he lived in the villas and he wanted to thank me. I said I was just standing up for myself. He said that was enough. I nodded. The next day, I got a letter from the board. It said they were implementing a new resident advisory committee to review all enforcement actions. It said they wanted me to serve on it. I thought about it for a day. Then I said yes. The first meeting was the following week. I showed up with the tabbed binder. Tom was there. Linda was there. 3 other residents were there. We spent 2 hours reviewing the new procedures. At the end, Tom said the HOA was in a better place because of what happened. I said it was in a better place because people spoke up. He agreed. A month later, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store. She said she got her refund. I said I was glad. She asked if it was worth it. I said yes. She said she wished she had fought harder 2 years ago. I said it was not too late to make sure it did not happen again. She asked what I meant. I told her about the advisory committee. She said she would think about it. A week later, she joined. 6 months later, the board held its annual meeting. The president announced that enforcement actions were down 70%. He said resident complaints were down 80%. He said the advisory committee had been a success. He thanked me by name. The room applauded. I stood and waved. After the meeting, a resident came up to me. She said she heard what I did. She said she was having trouble with her HOA in a different neighborhood. I gave her Emily's number. I told her to document everything. She thanked me and left. That night, I sat on my porch and looked at the neighborhood. The streetlights were on. The air was humid. The cicadas were buzzing. It was quiet. For the first time in a year, I felt like I belonged. I thought about everything that had happened. The town notice, the missing rule, the fake violations, the investigation, the trial, the refunds, the reforms. It had been exhausting. It had been worth it. I thought about Deborah. I wondered if she understood what she had done. I wondered if she regretted it. I decided it did not matter. What mattered was that it was over. What mattered was that the system had worked, eventually. What mattered was that I had stood up and refused to back down. I went inside and grabbed a beer. I sat back down on the porch. A neighbor walked by with a dog. He waved. I waved back. He said, "Nice night." I said it was. He kept walking. I sipped the beer. I thought about the customer at the shop who asked if I would do it again. I thought about my answer. I meant it. If I had to, I would do it again. But I hoped I did not have to. I hoped the reforms would stick. I hoped the board would stay accountable. I hoped residents would keep speaking up. I hoped the next person who got a bogus notice would know they did not have to just pay it. I hoped they would know they could fight back. I hoped they would know they could win. I finished the beer and went inside. I put the tabbed binder on the shelf. I did not need it anymore. But I kept it, just in case. Keep your receipts, and I will catch you next time.